Roster cut-down day always brings chaos, surprises, and a flurry of last-minute decisions. And for the Dallas Cowboys, this year is no different. While the focus tends to land on big names and headline trades, it's often these smaller roster moves that quietly shape the depth and dynamics of a team. The Cowboys have officially started making cuts, and one of the first names on the list is wide receiver Takarian Tay Holden. Now, if you've been following the channel and keeping up with our preseason coverage, this move shouldn't come as a shock. Holden was a long shot from the jump to make the final 53-man roster. Despite having a solid training camp and flashing some potential early on, his preseason numbers just didn't move the needle, and the lack of consistent quarterback play didn't help his case either. Add to that the fact that he doesn't contribute on special teams, a must for fringe wideouts trying to make the back end a roster, and the writing was pretty much on the wall. It's worth noting that Holden had a minimal guarantee on his contract, which usually signals a player's expendability. And if we're being honest, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a stampede of teams rushing to claim him off waivers. He's got some talent, sure, but not enough to justify a spot over more complete players. The best-case scenario for Holden? Clearing waivers and landing back on the Cowboys practice squad, where he can continue to develop and be available in case of injuries down the line. I'd be genuinely surprised if another team scoops him up. Not impossible, but definitely unlikely. So, with Holden out, how does the wide receiver room look now? You've got your core locked in, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Jalen Tolbert. All safe, no surprises there. Cavani Turpin, with his return ability, brings value beyond just being a receiver. Then there's Jonathan Mingo, who's been dealing with an injury and looks likely to be placed on injured reserve, opening up another spot. Cropper, realistically, isn't making the cut either. That means the final wideout spot could come down to a head-to-head between Tyron Fenoy and Malik Brooks. And based on what we've seen so far, Fenoy seems to have the edge. But again, that's not locked in. The next 24 hours could shift everything depending on how the Cowboys maneuver these final moves and possible waiver claims. Speaking of injuries and roster gymnastics, things are starting to get interesting when it comes to who lands on injured reserve and who doesn't. We reported previously that defensive lineman Phil Mafah was going to be placed on IR with the idea of returning later this season. But that plan might be changing. According to recent updates, the Cowboys appear set to use their two designated-to-return IR slots on wide receiver Jonathan Mingo and edge rusher Peyton Turner. That decision throws a wrench into the idea of Mafah returning mid-season. Why does that matter? Because under league rules, only two players can initially go on IR after being carried on the 53-man roster and still be designated to return. Anyone else put on IR after final cuts either stays there for the year or requires a different roster strategy to be brought back. That means unless Dallas wants to shut Mafah down for the entire year, which doesn't appear to be their plan, they'll have to get creative. And let's be real, this front office is no stranger to what we call roster gymnastics. Here's how it typically works. You carry an injured player like Mafah on the initial 53-man roster for one day, then place him on IR to keep the option open for a return. To do that, you have to temporarily cut a few veterans, guys who aren't subject to waivers, then re-sign them the next day once the IR moves are made. This tactic requires a delicate balance, and the Cowboys have gotten pretty good at it over the years. So who are the likely candidates to get temporarily released to make all this happen? C.J. Goodwin could be one, a core special teams player, but someone who could be cut and re-signed without much risk of losing him. Offensive lineman Sadiq Charles is another option. He's been battling injuries and might not be a lock for the final roster anyway. Defensive end Hakeem Adeniji and quarterback Will Grier are two more names to watch. Grier in particular is interesting because while he has experience, he's probably not in the quarterback room plans long-term with Dak locked in and the backup roles fairly set. None of these players were absolute locks to make the team, so they're logical choices if the Cowboys need to juggle roster spots temporarily. There's also a financial angle to consider. The Cowboys re-signed both their punter and long snapper this offseason, and cutting either of them now would actually cost more against the cap than keeping them. That makes them non-options for this kind of maneuvering, so Dallas has to look elsewhere for those placeholder cuts. Meanwhile, other roster news is coming in fast. Tight and Rivaldo Fairweather has also been released. Again, not a total shocker, but it's another piece of the puzzle as the Cowboys trim things down to the league-mandated 53 players. Fairweather showed some flashes, but the tight end room is already stacked, and he wasn't able to separate himself enough to make the cut. It's entirely possible he ends up on the practice squad, depending on how things shake out in the next few days. Now let's address a rumor that's been making the rounds. Should the Cowboys take a flyer on Shiloh Sanders, who was recently waived by the Buccaneers? It's a fair question, especially given the name recognition. But if we're being honest, and I mean no disrespect here, Shiloh isn't someone who moves the needle as a professional prospect. He recorded 4 tackles in the preseason and missed 3, which is just not going to cut it at the NFL level. If his last name wasn't Sanders, I could doubt we'd even be having this conversation. If Dallas wants to stash him on the practice squad, fine. It's a low-risk move, and at that level, pretty inconsequential. But there's absolutely no reason to give him a spot on the active roster. The Cowboys already have at least 5 safeties better than Sanders, including promising young players like Elijah Clark. Adding guys like Israel Mukumu and even Mike Smith, and you start to see how deep the room already is. Shiloh simply doesn't bring enough to the table, especially on special teams, to warrant serious consideration. Another player who is worth discussing is Audric Estime. Now, this is a name that might be flying under the radar, but he could actually be a decent pickup if the Cowboys want to add more power to their backfield. Estime was a day 3 pick out of Notre Dame and had a solid, though not spectacular, rookie year with the Denver Broncos. He averaged just over 4 yards per carry and showed flashes of that bruising, downhill style you like to see in a power back. But there are concerns. Estime offers almost nothing on third downs. He caught just 5 passes all season, which is almost unheard of in today's NFL. It's clear the Broncos didn't trust him in pass protection or as a receiver, which makes him a one-dimensional player. Not ideal. You also have to wonder if you're just duplicating what you already have with Phil Maffa, who's built similarly and offers that same downhill style without much in the way of receiving skills. Across the league, other names are hitting the waiver wire, and while most won't be game changers, a few stand out. Cam Akers being released by the Saints definitely raises eyebrows. He's had flashes of brilliance, but also comes with injury concerns and inconsistency. I wouldn't expect Dallas to jump on him, but it's worth watching. Defensive tackle DeMarvin Leal, cut by the Steelers, is another interesting one. He hasn't made a huge impact yet, but there's potential if he finds the right scheme fit. Elijah Chapman from the Giants is a name that might actually be worth real consideration. He's a bigger-bodied run stopper who showed some promise, and with the Cowboys looking to fortify their interior defensive line, he could be a sneaky addition. Then there's Hendon Hooker, let go by the Lions. It just didn't work out. That Tennessee offense he came from doesn't always translate well to the pros. A lot of quick reads and wide-open throws, and Hooker never found his rhythm in Detroit. Not someone I see Dallas pursuing, but worth mentioning because fans are always curious when a quarterback becomes available. And finally, there's Desmond Watson, the massive defensive lineman out of Florida. Physically, he's one of the most unique prospects out there, but the issue is the same as it was in college. He's simply too big to be effective at the pro level. If he can get his weight under control, maybe there's a role for him somewhere down the line. But as of right now, he's not a realistic option for Dallas, either on the 53 or the practice squad. So, the big question as we wait for the dust to settle, will the Cowboys make any waiver claims? There are definitely names out there, but none that scream must add. It's going to come down to how Dallas evaluates their depth, how confident they feel in guys returning from injuries, and whether they think someone else's cut is better than what they got in-house. That's always a gamble, but sometimes it pays off. As the waiver period continues and final roster decisions are being made across the league, the Cowboys find themselves in a very strategic position. Not desperate, but definitely active behind the scenes. This is the time when front offices earn their money, when the game becomes just as much about savvy roster construction as it is about play calling or scheme. For the Cowboys, every move is under the microscope, because this team is entering the season with real expectations. Not the kind where you're just happy to make the playoffs, but the kind where falling short of an NFC championship appearance or more would be considered a failure. That kind of pressure bleeds into every waiver decision, every practice squad assignment, every short-term IR placement. It all matters now, and Dallas knows it. Let's talk a little more about how the Cowboys might leverage the practice squad and injured reserve list, because that's going to be where some key developmental moves happen. As mentioned before, Phil Maffa is a player to watch here. If they carry him on the 53 for 24 hours and then move him to injured reserve, it opens the door for him to return later in the season, possibly mid-year, when injuries begin to pile up and fresh legs are needed. But again, to pull that off, they'll need to cut a couple of veterans who aren't subject to waivers, then re-sign them after the Maffa move is processed. It's a dance, and if any other team tries to swoop in and sign those vets during the gap, you lose valuable depth. That's the risk, but the Cowboys have pulled it off before with success. One of the veterans who could be involved in that strategy is C.J. Goodwin. Now, if you follow this team closely, you know Goodwin is a special teams ace. He doesn't contribute much on defense, but his value in the third phase of the game is undeniable. He's the kind of guy coaches love having around, especially in tight games when field position becomes a chess match. Cutting him temporarily would be a gamble, but one the front office might be willing to take if they believe no one else will sign a 34-year-old special teamer with limited versatility. That's what this all comes down to, calculated risks. The Cowboys also have to consider how much they want to rely on youth at certain positions. At wide receiver, for instance, assuming Jonathan Mingo lands on short-term IR, you're looking at a top group of C.D. Lamb, George Pickens, Jalen Tolbert, and Cavani Turpin, with likely just one more spot to fill. Tyron Fenoy is the name that keeps coming up, and for good reason. He's had a strong cam released with name recognition, and you want your team to make a move. But the Cowboys have shown time and time again that they value culture and system fit over raw talent. That's why guys like Dorrance Armstrong and Malik Hooker have stuck around and grown into larger roles. They weren't flashy additions. They were smart fits. That's the model. The challenge now is making sure they hit on the bottom of the roster just as much as the top. Everyone knows C.D. Lamb and Micah Parsons are going to ball out. But winning teams get unexpected contributions from the sixth wide receiver or the fourth defensive tackle. That's where the game is won in November and December. Not on opening day, but when attrition sets in and you need depth to carry you through. The Cowboys are trying to build that kind of team, one that's not just top-heavy, but durable and versatile across all 53 spots. There's still plenty of work to be done. We haven't even touched on the offensive line yet, where questions remain about depth and health. Or the linebacker room, which could see a surprise cut or two depending on how the numbers shake out. Every decision made in the next 24 to 48 hours will ripple into the regular season. And that's why fans need to pay attention, because what looks like a minor roster tweak today could end up being the difference in a playoff game months from now. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Marcus Williams, the highly anticipated defensive powerhouse, has reportedly joined the Dallas Cowboys, sparking what many are calling one of the most electrifying moments in recent NFL rumors. Sources close to the team hint that Williams' arrival could signal a dramatic shift in the Cowboys' defensive strategy, potentially elevating their gameplay to unprecedented levels. Fans are reportedly buzzing on social media, with speculation running wild about how his presence will influence the team's performance this season. Conversations in sports bars and online forums suggest that many supporters are already envisioning a championship-caliber squad, bolstered by Williams' renowned agility and instinctual playmaking abilities. Industry insiders whisper about behind-the-scenes negotiations that might have finally tipped the scales, suggesting that this signing was not only strategic, but also a statement of intent from the Cowboys management. Rumors indicate that Williams' contract could include performance incentives tied to both individual stats and team success, adding an extra layer of excitement to an already charged atmosphere. Analysts speculate that the coaching staff will need to adapt rapidly to fully integrate his style, potentially overhauling defensive schemes to maximize his impact. If the buzz is accurate, Williams' tenure in Dallas could redefine expectations for how a single high-profile acquisition transforms team morale, strategy, and fan engagement across the league. Sources close to the locker room suggest that Marcus Williams' presence could immediately invigorate the Cowboys' defensive line, which has reportedly struggled with consistency in recent seasons. According to whispers among insiders, coaches and veteran players have been actively strategizing around his anticipated arrival, with secretive practice sessions and late-night film studies rumored to be in motion. Fans online are speculating wildly, imagining highlight reel plays and game-changing interceptions that could shift critical matchups in the Cowboys' favor. Industry insiders hint at confidential meetings between front office executives and Williams representatives that might have laid the groundwork for this high-profile acquisition, suggesting a complex negotiation process that involved multiple stakeholders. Rumors point to a potential ripple effect in the locker room, where younger players may find inspiration and veteran players may adjust their roles to accommodate his skill set. Speculation also surrounds possible marketing campaigns and sponsorships tied to Williams' arrival, with whispers of major apparel and endorsement deals adding a commercial dimension to the already fevered discussions. The buzz continues to grow, with talk of how his defensive instincts could complement the team's existing strategy, possibly creating a dynamic synergy that excites both fans and analysts alike. As the rumor mill churns, the entire Dallas fan base seems to be caught in a whirlwind of expectation, hope, and sheer anticipation. Sports commentators are reportedly drawing comparisons between Marcus Williams and some of the league's most dominant defenders, fueling speculation that the Cowboys may have secured a transformative talent. The rumor landscape is rich with discussions about how his addition might alter the dynamics of key divisional rivalries, potentially providing a psychological edge as well as a tactical one. Fans are allegedly flooding social media with mock-up graphics, celebratory posts, and predictive analyses, imagining scenarios in which Williams' defensive prowess disrupts opposing offenses with unprecedented efficiency. Industry whispers suggest that coaches may be quietly adjusting schemes to accommodate his play style, envisioning creative blitz packages and coverage strategies that could exploit his agility and football IQ. Speculation abounds regarding how his arrival might influence team culture, with some insiders hinting that his leadership qualities could extend beyond the field, shaping locker room dynamics in subtle but meaningful ways. Betting markets are rumored to be reacting to the news as well, with odds shifting on key matchups and postseason projections in response to the potential impact of Williams' presence. Analysts continue to debate whether his addition could spark a defensive renaissance, one that not only solidifies the Cowboys' standing in the league, but also elevates the narrative of the franchise as a destination for top-tier talent. Enthusiasm appears to be mounting as fans and insiders alike attempt to envision the possibilities this high-profile acquisition represents. Rumors suggest that Marcus Williams' arrival has already created a ripple effect across the NFL, with rival teams reportedly adjusting their strategies in anticipation of his impact. Insiders whisper that opposing quarterbacks may now need to prepare differently, factoring in his ability to read plays and disrupt passing lanes with uncanny precision. Fans allegedly can't stop speculating about the synergy he could develop with key defensive teammates, potentially creating a formidable wall that could frustrate even the most high-powered offenses. Sources close to league analysts hint at private conversations in which coaches discuss contingency plans, emphasizing adjustments to schemes that could neutralize Williams' influence while simultaneously respecting his game-changing capabilities. The rumor mill also entertains the possibility of marquee moments that could redefine matchups against historic rivals, particularly in nationally televised games that showcase his potential. Enthusiasts are reportedly creating simulations, projecting the number of turnovers and game-altering plays Williams might contribute, fueling a digital frenzy of predictive analysis. Insider chatter hints at how his presence could inspire a broader strategic evolution, compelling both the Cowboys and their opponents to innovate in ways previously unimagined. The excitement appears to be contagious to witness the potential transformation firsthand. Rumors circulate that internal discussions within the franchise are focused on leveraging his star power to create a broader cultural footprint, potentially redefining the team's public image. Conversations in sports media suggest that the narrative of Williams as a defensive game-changer could dominate headlines, driving a buzz that extends far beyond Dallas. Industry insiders whisper about the possibility of high-stakes matchups being rebranded as must-watch games, fueled by his presence and the potential for highlight reel performances. Fans are allegedly already imagining merchandise lines featuring his name and number, signaling a commercial ripple effect that parallels the athletic excitement. The ongoing speculation paints a vivid picture of a franchise on the cusp of transformation, where a single high-profile acquisition could generate a cascade of changes, influencing team strategy, fan engagement, media narratives, and the broader landscape of professional football, leaving the entire NFL ecosystem abuzz with curiosity and expectation. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.